Thank you so much. So, welcome everyone, and this session is about the role of policy to actually enable companies to drive with competitive but also innovative solutions together with new strategic partnerships for the green transition to happen. And as we heard our Prime Minister and also our previous speakers so wisely pointed out, we need to speak about the preconditions, in this term, the policy-wise, how we can actually make sure to have a long-term sustainable economic growth to drive. And of course, our Swedish companies are really pioneering here and also is a major part of the just transition, I would say. So to support me here, I have now the privilege to welcome three distinguished panelists onto the stage. And I will now see if I have the pleasure of the Executive Director of UN Environment Program here, Inger Anderson. Please, you are so welcome. And then we have Boaz Paldi, Chief Creative Officer for United Nations Development Program. And also Eija Hietavuo, the Vice President Corporate Affairs for Tetra Pak. So welcome on stage. Thank you. You're all welcome. And may I please start with you, Inger Anderson?
Sure.
And we are, of course, speaking about the solutions to the climate crisis. And usually we speak a lot about finance, so we'll hear more about that. But then when it comes to policy, we need to emphasize that as well. And may you please elaborate on your views on that?
Well, at UNEP, we are sort of responsible for holding up the science to the world. But science is only science. It has to roll into policy. And when it rolls into policy and enables that, because science tells us A, B, C, therefore we have to do X, Y, Z, that's when financing opens up. Financing doesn't just come because it thinks it's a neat idea. Yes, some entrepreneurial CEOs will do that, but the way to create the systemic is to have a good science policy to finance interface. That's what the world is calling for. And we see that, you can enable policies on polluter pays. And when you do that, you know that, all of a sudden, the pollution will be reduced. You can enable policies on reduced emissions. And when that happens, well, all of a sudden, certain renewables, certain vehicles, certain behaviors will shift. You can ban smoking. I mean, the point is that policies matter. And so what we are seeing is, however, that there is often a lag. Science has been telling the story that mercury or lead in petrol was dangerous for 100 years. But it was only August 2021 that the last pumped the last gas or petrol into the last car in the last country. And we finally got rid of that. So the story is also about how do we expedite from science to policy to finance. And this is where conversations such as this really matter, because the incentivization, the awareness is important. And here we'll say, politicians who put up their hands and say, I want to lead my country, you have a responsibility. You cannot just say, I got my 4-year term and all is good and what I want to do is to get re-elected. No, you have a responsibility also to the next generation and the one after that. And that means sometimes making difficult policy decisions because they might seem difficult in the first round, but in the longer run, they're absolutely what will lead to the right actions, to the kind of jobs, to the kind of economy we want to be.
Thank you so much for that. And now turning over to Boaz Paldi, you have actually launched the Don't Choose Extinction campaign. Can you please elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, so the Don't Choose Extinction campaign, is there something wrong with my, it's working. The Don't Choose Extinction campaign focuses very much on decarbonization, but very specifically about fossil fuel subsidy and fossil fuel subsidy reform. It's an issue that many people don't know about. Last year, $423 billion were used in direct subsidies by governments across the world. Those subsidies go 80% to manufacturers. That means fossil fuel companies, essentially. And it's our tax dollars that are doing that. But most humanity doesn't even know that. That $423 billion represents negative impact on the planet. We need to erase that negative impact before we can have positive impact. So it's kind of like it's very much at the heart of it. But as most people don't know about it, and it's a difficult issue. Shall I try that one? That's better. So as most people don't know about this policy, we were trying to find an easy entry into it, and we feel like doom and gloom campaigns just fall flat. People are sick of hearing that we're going to die tomorrow. We don't want to know anymore. We need to be a little bit more positive. We need to be slightly funny. So what we did was have a dinosaur, specifically a Utahraptor, barge into the United Nations General Assembly and give a very, very passionate speech about how humanity should not choose extinction, and it's absurd and stupid what we're doing. So that's the essence of the campaign. But behind it is a very, very serious issue of fossil fuel subsidy reform with a larger conversation about decarbonization that absolutely has to happen now.
Thank you very much for that. And then moving over to you, Eija, from a company perspective. So where is policy most needed, would you say?
Well, first of all, does this work now? Yes, very good. So first of all, great to be here. So thank you very much for inviting me. And secondly, I think we've had such distinguished speakers here talking so much about the importance of policy and all of that. And I'd like to actually to refer to what Professor Rockström was just suggesting, which is really about the framing of how business actually, not just individual companies that may be forerunners, but all business would thrive in a regulatory environment which actually pushes and sets the limits higher. And this may be something that not many years ago companies were talking about, that we would actually appreciate policy. We would appreciate more higher science-based policies that actually lead the way, because it's also a competitiveness issue. So we need those policy measures in order to shine, those who shine, but also to actually achieve results, because that's all that matters right now. And some of the issues that we're tackling, they have economic kind of imperatives. They have issues, obviously environmental, but also social. So from a holistic perspective, business can't do that alone. So you need governments to guide them through, and basically totally endorsed what Professor Rockström was actually saying.
Thank you so much, Eija. And now coming back to you, Inger, I understand that within UNEP you're also emphasizing the role of energy efficiency in terms of policy. Could you please elaborate a bit on that focus?
Absolutely. I mean, when we think of it, well, first of all, we probably need to step back and say that there are 700 and around 30 million people who do not have access to modern energy, and they have every right to expect the kind of access that we all have. And so the question is, what kind of appliances, etc., are they going to get? And meanwhile, all of us who have these appliances already, what can we do to invest in greater efficiency? We can massively increase efficiency in appliances, in light bulbs, in building, in design, and it's just there for the taking, and it will lead to better jobs. And look, let's think about it. In some countries, yes, we are regulating for energy efficiency, say in Sweden, but in others we are not. That's crazy. We are already regulating for earthquakes, security for electrical faults, for fire, and so on. Why not for energy? So it's there for the taking. But let's understand energy poverty. Those 733 million people. Take South Sudan, 7.1% access to electricity. I'll say that again. 7.1% of the population have access to electricity, yet South Sudan has oil resources. What is the world going to tell South Sudan? What is the answer? Chad has gas, 11% access to electricity. What is the world going to tell? So investing in energy efficiency, but climate justice has also to be part of it, and financing. These are critical. But if we take just a few basic appliances, so it's about lighting, room, AC, refrigerators, transformers, and industrial motors, and just drive energy efficiency in those 5 areas, we will reduce our emissions the equivalent of Turkey, Indonesia, and South Africa. Boom, done. So this is entirely in our hands, and we can do it, and we have to. And Sweden has already pioneered, but can reach even further for greater efficiency. It's great for jobs, great for the economy, great for growth, and great for global example. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now coming back to the topic to Boas on the fossil fuel subsidies, what would you say would be a viable solution to that?
UNDP thinks that there's a viable solution in using that funds for the betterment of society. If you have 423 billion dollars sitting in one pot that's going towards subsidies to fossil fuel companies, why not take that back and give it somehow directly to society in a positive impact? You could use a temporary basic income. You could do a universal basic income. You could probably, at that point when we were launching the campaign, there was still a big issue of vaccine equity. You could vaccinate everyone around the world for COVID-19. You could create green jobs. You could kickstart the green transition with these funds. So what we need to do is make a positive impact that will not have, the bottom line will hit the poorest and the most disenfranchised, but rather bring them along and leave no one behind. And these funds are viable for that use. So we would suggest that countries look again at fossil fuel subsidy reform and see how they can make sure that their citizens don't pay the highest burden of the price of reducing those subsidies, and we believe that it's possible.
Thank you very much, Boas, for that very concrete recommendation. And now over to you, Eija. Coming from Tetra Pak, could you please give an example in terms of the food system transformation and policy needed?
Yes, maybe for those of you who don't know Tetra Pak that well, or then maybe know it as a packaging company. So we're actually one of the world's largest food-related equipment and processing technology companies as well. So food is really at the essence of what we do, and basically that was the foundation of the company. So of course food systems are really something that we thrive to change and or contribute to that change, because they have massive impact not only on climate, where I think a third of the global emissions actually derive from food systems, but also they have impact on human lives and nature and other things. So in essence, what we've been trying to do is to create some kind of pathways that would help business kind of develop, especially in our industry, thrive together pathways towards a better food system. And this started at the UN Food System Summit. And when we talk about policies in this area, so on my wish list, it would be that next year at the UN Food System Summit, hopefully on number 2, that something would move forward. But I also have great hopes for EU, because EU, obviously being a European company, they are the first ones now coming up with the sustainable food systems policy framework deriving from farm and fork. And what EU has done in such a beautiful way is try to build this climate meets nature meets food systems. So really we look forward to that as a good example, which is hopefully then something to adopt more broadly.
Thank you so much. And you already touched upon it now, Eija, but may I please ask you to summarize and wrap up this session to each one of you to say what would be the most needed policy changes, because we are actually into concrete actions here now. So what would you say, each one of you?
There's not one policy that would make the fix, but it is a systemic thinking and a conscious awareness in each of the policies: food system, packaging, energy, transport, and general societal existence, farming. And this is where all the solutions lie. all of them. And that is the only pathway, echoing a little bit what Johan was saying at the earlier panel, that is the pathway, systemic and conscious policy shifts.
Well, it's for me. I would agree completely. It's about systemic change. It's about systemic change now. We can't wait any longer. Action needs to happen now. This COP is the perfect opportunity for us to move towards action, and that's what we really want to see. We want to see implementation. We want to see action, and that's what would be my wish.
I think we all share the same wish, and I think what you said in the beginning about science being the base, and for instance the planetary boundaries framework giving different, that with the food systems reflecting those boundaries and basing some concrete targets in policy, that would be something that would drive things forward.
Thank you so much for these very concrete measures. So thank you so much.